So this is lesson 9 in our Java class, and so I'm in my project for lesson 8 through 12, and I'm going to make a new class. I'm going to make sure that I'm in the correct folder if I didn't have that pre-selected, and call this lesson 09. Make sure that I create a main so I can do all of my coding inside my main here. And the if statement is one of the unique statements in Java in that it doesn't have a semicolon at the end of the line. An if statement is going to start out with the word if and then a set of parentheses. And in the parentheses, you're going to put a statement that could be true or could be false. For example, you could put if 1 is less than 2, and then it has an error because I have to complete my if statement not by putting a semicolon, but by putting a set of curly braces that will let me put whatever I want it to do inside those curly braces. So if 1 is less than 2, I'm going to do a print 1 is smaller. And if I run this, you can see down the bottom it said 1 is smaller. What if I said something that was not true? If I say something that's not true, if 1 is greater than 2, I'm going to print that again, and absolutely nothing happened. In fact, it said that's dead code because 1 is not bigger than 2. And the computer recognized that I had a statement that could never be true no matter what happens. So what if I want it to do something if it is false? Then I'm going to come to the end of this curly brace. I'm going to put else and another set of curly braces. Inside here, I'm going to do something that will happen if that statement was false. I might copy this and paste it here. And this time I'm just going to say it was false. So let's change the statement around this time. And if I run it, 1 is less than 2, it prints 1 is less than 2. If I make it greater, it'll say it was false because the first statement was not true. So that's not very interesting. We already know about 1 and 2. So let's change this a little bit so that we can have some input and have the user type a number, something like that. So if I want to do that, I need a scanner. And it's unhappy because there's no input statement. So I'll let it import a scanner. Now the error message goes away. And then I'm going to say, let's see, my number equals kbreader.next int. And that is going to be an integer. And I'm going to tell them enter an integer. And then instead of guessing about this one, I'm going to put if my number is greater than 2, I'm going to say that was more than 2. Otherwise, I'm going to say that was not more than 2. And so I'll run it. It says enter an integer greater than 2. I'll put in 4, and it says that was more than 2. I'll run it again. This time I'll put 1. That was not more than 2. And if I put a 2, this statement was false, so it said that was not more than 2. We could also put a equals in here, and if that was a greater than or equal to, if I put in a 2, it'll say that was more than 2. It's very happy to say something that's not true if I tell it to. So that's the basic if statement. There is no semicolon at the end of the if line. And in fact, if I put one there, it'll give me an error message for my else, because this else is not related to the if there's a semicolon and curly braces after it. You can have the semicolon or the curly braces, and the semicolon is just going to cause trouble. So what if I want if this isn't true, I want it to check something different. So suppose I want to be able to say that was more than 2, that was equal to 2, or that was less than 2. Well, in that case, instead of just saying else here, I'll say else if, and then I have to have another statement. If my number equals 2, if my number equals 2, then I'm going to say that was equal to 2. Otherwise, I'm going to say that was not more than 2. Now I do have a error, a type mismatch, because it says cannot convert from int to Boolean. It's confused by this single equal statement. A single equal statement changes my num to that number. That doesn't work with an if. I have to put 2 equal signs so that it's checking to see if it's equal to it. So now I can run it, and if I put in 4, it says that was more than 2. If I put in 2, it says that was more than 2. If I put in 1, it says that was not more than 2. And this is having trouble. So this isn't getting to this part of the code, because up here I still said if my num is greater than or equal to 2. If that's true, it's going to do what's in the curly brace. It's never going to check to see if it's equal. It's going to do only one of these groups of things. So once it discovers that it was greater than or equal to 2, it prints this, and it never checks to see if it's equal. So if I take this out, put this back to greater than 2, and try running it with a 2, this time it discovers it wasn't greater, so it doesn't do this. It says if it's equal to 2, it's going to print it's equal to 2, and it did. And again, if I do a number that's smaller than 2, like a negative number, it says that was not more than 2. So it's working exactly as I requested. Those else ifs, you can have as many of those as you want, and then if you include an else, it'll do that once it's checked for every single one. But once it finds one that's true, it won't continue doing any more after that. So that's going to be uh, the lesson for lesson 9. The other thing is when you're working on the project for this, it's going to say enter an integer, and then you need to check if it's even or odd. Remember, we use the modulus operator. The modulus was the percent sign that checks. If you do modulus 2, it will divide by 2, and if it gets a 0, it knows it's even. If it gets a 1, it knows that it's odd. So you're going to use modulus and check to see if the number that they enter, if it has divided by 2, has a remainder of 0 or 1, so you know if it's even or odd. And that's lesson 9.